New Year's Eve is supposed to be noisy fireworks, countdown, laughter, chaos in a good way. But on December 31st, 2017, in a small duplex on Wall Street in Long Branch, New Jersey, the noise wasn't fireworks. It was a 16-year-old boy calmly moving room to room in his family home, firing a semi-automatic rifle at the people who loved him most. By the time police arrived, 4 people were dead: his parents, his sister, a family friend, and the person responsible was a teenager they'd raised, protected, and trusted. We're breaking down the case of Scott Kologi, the boy who murdered half his family just minutes before midnight, and the haunting question that still hangs over this story. Was this the act of a cold-blooded killer, or a mentally ill kid failed by every system around him? Before we dive in, if you're into deep dive true crime told with receipts, context, and zero sugarcoating, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next case. It costs you nothing, but it helps this channel a lot. Alright, let's go back to where this all started. New Jersey, shore town, Long Branch. From the outside, the Kologi family looked like exactly what people keep calling them in interviews. Picturesque. Father, Stephen Kologi, early 40s. Former postal worker, hustling multiple jobs, overtime shifts, whatever it took to keep the family afloat. Mother, Linda Kologi, also early 40s, described as a doting, always smiling mom who'd come into the local store with the kids, buy snacks, grab a lottery ticket, chat with the staff. For children in total. One of them, 18-year-old Brittany, had just finished her first semester at Stockton University and was home for the holidays. Scott's grandfather also lived with them, and his longtime partner, 70-year-old Mary Schultz, spent a lot of time in the home and was staying over that night. To neighbors, they weren't the problem house. They were the people you saw at softball fields on Sundays, or walking into the corner shop as a unit. They'd had money problems like a lot of families, including a bankruptcy filing almost a decade earlier. But by 2017, they were still there, still together, still pushing forward. Nothing about their public life screamed, "This home is a crime scene waiting to happen." At the center of this story is Scott Kologi, 16 years old at the time of the killings. From reporting and court records, a few things show up over and over about Scott. He struggled in school. He was bullied when he was younger. He had learning difficulties and developmental issues. Family friends said his parents eventually pulled him from regular school and homeschooled him for a time. They said he improved. He learned to read better, do his maths, crack jokes, and seemed more relaxed. But behind that, there was something darker. Scott heard voices. He saw things others didn't. In court documents, he told investigators he had 2 instances of hearing things. Once, when he was younger, he heard a voice on the stairs. Another time, he thought he saw a pinkish mass staring out from his neighbor's house. On another occasion, he thought he saw a transparent woman floating into his bedroom ceiling while he was trying to fall asleep. He said he saw red faces on the wall. His own aunt later told investigators Scott had told his mother, "I want to talk to the shrink. I'm having bad thoughts about hurting the neighbor's kid." Everyone assumed it was teenage angst, weirdness. But it was far more dangerous than that. As the story unfolds, what haunts you is not just the massacre, it's what happened before. Scott's mental state deteriorated steadily. 2 months before the killings, his hallucinations intensified. He told his mother and others. He was having bad thoughts, the voice in the shower told him. Welcome to the side of evil. He told his mother specifically he had thoughts about harming his family. Here's the gut punch. His mother apparently brushed off those conversations. In one car trip, Scott told his mother, "Why can't I tell the shrink about killing the family?" No major intervention. No clear path to mental health support. A question that now echoes. What if someone had listened? If you're watching this, if you ever feel ignored or worried about someone's cries for help, don't wait. Speak up. Seek help. Because sometimes the voices are real, and the silence costs lives. It was December 31st. Guests. Food. Anticipation. A new year. And then the moment around 11:43 p.m. The phone call to 911. Gunshots reported. Scott grabbed a semi-automatic rifle owned legally by someone in the house. He walked through rooms. He knew what he was doing. Court records show he loaded 2 magazines. He said later, "I kept shooting until they stopped moving." He shot his mother 5 to 7 times. His father, his sister, Mary Schultz, each wound deliberate. He told officers he heard his mother call him. Then he shut off. Even as this was happening, he rationalized. He turned lights off. He wore earplugs. He planned. The grandfather and brother escaped. Why they lived while the others died is a matter of tragic calculus. As the police arrived, Scott remained. No shootout. No escape plan. He handed himself over. In an interview, he said the shooting felt like watching a movie. He said, "I knew what I was doing, that they were dead, but I had no feeling." He said he wanted a mental institution. He said he didn't feel sad. He said he'd had these bad thoughts a year or two before. He said he once thought of walking a few blocks and shooting, but was tired so stopped. The irony, he knew right from wrong. He could articulate it, but the law would eventually say, yes, he knew. Yes, he did. By the time responders arrive, four people are dead at different spots inside the home. Stephen Kologi, the father. Linda Kologi, mother. Brittany Kologi, the sister Mary Schultz, the grandfather's partner and family friend. They weren't killed in one spot. They were found in various locations, indicating Scott moved through the house firing. And then there's what didn't happen. Scott's grandfather survived. Scott's brother survived. Another friend in the home also escaped unharmed. Prosecutors later emphasized this as proof that Scott wasn't in some uncontrollable frenzy. He chose who to target and who to spare. Police arrive and find Scott still in the home. There is no shootout, no chase, no standoff. He's arrested without incident. He gives himself up. The semi-automatic rifle used in the murders is recovered at the scene. That's it. In a matter of minutes, 3 generations of a family are torn apart. If you like long-form, fully researched true crime, where we don't just repeat headlines, but actually walk through the court battles, psychology, and aftermath, hit subscribe right now. Drop a comment if you want more cases like this, and share this video with someone. At first, because Scott was 16, the case started in family court, which is how juvenile cases are usually handled. But this wasn't shoplifting or a school fight. He was accused of killing 4 people with a semi-automatic rifle. Very quickly, prosecutors made it clear they wanted him tried as an adult. In late 2019, a judge agreed to move the case out of juvenile court and into adult criminal court. By this point, Scott is no longer a fresh-faced 16-year-old. He's 18, then 19, then 20 as pretrial motions drag on. In December 2019, the defense tries to get him moved from jail to a psychiatric hospital, arguing what they'd keep repeating for years. Scott is autistic. He suffers from hallucinations. He needs treatment, not just punishment. The court, however, orders that he remain jailed while he awaits trial. By January 2020, a Monmouth County grand jury indicts Scott as an adult on 4 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of a weapons offense, that is possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. From that point on, the timeline is set. This is going to be a major murder trial. When the trial finally gets underway, the defense strategy becomes clear. They aren't really claiming he didn't do it. They're claiming he wasn't criminally responsible because of severe mental illness. Scott's lawyers argue that he suffered deep, long-standing mental health issues. He lived with hallucinations and psychiatric symptoms. On the night of the killings, he was operating under serious mental illness that distorted his understanding of reality and the wrongfulness of his actions. They bring in mental health experts to support an insanity defense, arguing that he didn't fully comprehend what he was doing or that it was wrong. The prosecution, meanwhile, attacks that point from multiple angles. They present evidence that Scott researched whether the rifle he used would be effective against police wearing bulletproof vests, suggesting he was thinking ahead about law enforcement response, not confused or detached from reality. They argue that the fact he spared his grandfather, brother, and another friend in the house shows control and choice, not a random psychotic explosion. He surrendered without incident. No attempt to harm officers, no attempt at suicide, no reported delusional rant at the time of arrest. To prosecutors, that looked more like a calm acceptance of what he'd done than someone totally disconnected from reality. The jury has to decide who they believe. In February 2022, the jury comes back. Scott Kologi is found guilty on all charges. 4 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count related to the weapons offense. The insanity defense fails. The message from the jury is pretty clear. Yes, you can be mentally ill. But in their eyes, that didn't erase his responsibility for picking up a semi-automatic rifle and killing 4 people. For true crime viewers, this is one of those moments where you really sit back and ask, Where's the line between sick and evil in the eyes of the law? In Scott's case, New Jersey's system came down on the side of legally sane, criminally guilty. On July 2022, Scott Kologi, now about 20 years old, stands in a Monmouth County courtroom to hear how much of his life he's about to lose. The judge hands down what is basically a death in prison sentence. 150 years in state prison. That's structured as consecutive terms so that, realistically, he will never walk free again. Judge Mark C. Lemieux says in court that it's his intention Scott never see the light of the outside of a jail cell ever again. He also tells Scott he hopes one day he realizes the magnitude of what he's done. Prosecutors, the surviving brother, and community members describe the crime as a complete betrayal, not just of the victims, but of the idea of family itself. Think about it. Your parents are gone. Your sister is gone. Your grandfather's partner, someone who's basically family, is gone. And the person who did it was raised at the same table as you. There's no closure for that. Only degrees of survival. You'd think after a 150-year sentence, the story might fade. But in serious cases like this, appeals are basically guaranteed. Scott's legal team appealed his conviction and sentence, raising multiple issues. On January 30th, 2025, New Jersey's Appellate Division issued its decision. Result: they upheld the convictions. They upheld the 150-year sentence. Scott Kologi is a convicted murderer. His 150-year sentence stands. And legally, the system has spoken more than once. Once at trial, and again on appeal. This is where we step back and actually process what we just walked through. Because this isn't just a crazy case for shock value. It raises some heavy, uncomfortable questions. Mental illness versus accountability. It's clear from court filings and defense arguments that Scott wasn't a typical kid. Autism was raised by his defense lawyers. Hallucinations were mentioned. There were evaluations, diagnoses, school reports, and psychiatric opinions. But the law doesn't ask, were you mentally healthy? It asks, did you understand what you were doing, and did you know it was wrong? The jury and later the appellate court effectively answered, yes, he did. For some people, that feels harsh. For others, it feels necessary. For families of victims, there's often a need to hear the system say, what happened to you was not an accident of illness, it was a crime. Another part that's hard to ignore. The rifle used was legally registered to someone in the home. It was a semi-automatic rifle, powerful enough to kill multiple people quickly indoors. Should that kind of weapon have been in a home with a mentally struggling teen? Were there proper storage measures? Did anyone fully grasp the risk? You can debate gun politics all day, but in this house, in this story, the presence of that rifle turned what could have been a family tragedy of a different kind into a mass killing contained within four walls. Friends and neighbors described the Kologis as loving, supportive, always together. That's what makes this even harder. Sometimes there are warning signs, and people miss them. Sometimes the warning signs are only obvious after the tragedy, when everyone rewinds the tape with new eyes. From what's publicly known, there's still no clear motive. Authorities haven't offered a clean explanation of why he did it, and that's haunting. Because humans like answers. We want to put evil into a neat box. But in the Kologi case, the why remains foggy somewhere between mental illness, internal rage, and whatever was going on in his head that night that nobody else will ever fully know. So, when we say the Scott Kologi case, we're really talking about four people whose lives ended violently on a night that should have been about countdowns and new beginnings. Their story shouldn't just be a footnote to a teenage killer. If there's anything to take away from this case, it might be, take mental health seriously, especially when there's talk of hallucinations, delusions, or violent thoughts. And if there are firearms in the house, treat that reality with the full weight it deserves. If you made it this far into the video, first of all, you're built different. This was a heavy case. If you want more deep, narrative true crime breakdowns like this, with full context, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, drop a comment. Do you think the insanity defense should have worked here? How do you feel about a 150-year sentence for a crime committed at 16? And if you want this story to stick with people for the right reasons, as a reminder to watch out for warning signs, not glorify violence, share this video. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, take care of your mind, take care of your people, and I'll see you in the next case.